Today was the first day in the trial of torture slaying suspect George Thomas. He is the third defendant to be tried in the slayings of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. He is the defendant with the least amount of forensic evidence facing him. And that was apparent this morning in opening statements. His defense attorneys used a PowerPoint presentation to press the notion to the jury that there is nothing that links him in terms of any forensic or eyewitness evidence to these crimes. However, the defense conceded that Mr. Thomas was present in the house when some of these crimes would have been occurring. However, they say that that is not enough to convict him in any of these crimes, and under the law, mere presence is not enough. State prosecutors, in their opening statements, noted that they are proceeding under the criminal responsibility theory, and that means that if they can show Mr. Thomas shared in the proceeds of this crime event and either solicited, aided, directed, or attempted to aid any of the other suspects, he can be held equally responsible for the murders, the rapes, and the kidnappings. In testimony today, we heard very little about George Thomas as the state laid the groundwork for this overall story that they are telling jurors about what happened to Ms. Christian and Mr. Newsom. They started with Christopher Newsom's best friend, Josh Anderson, and Channon Christian's best friend, Kara Sowers, to lay out what the couple was doing in the hours before they disappeared in January 2007. Then later in the afternoon, we heard from a fella who has now been on the witness stand for 4 different trials, including a federal trial. That would be Xavier Jenkins. He's a Waste Connections employee. That business was located very close to the Chipman Street house where this couple was held hostage. He is key in that he puts Channon Christian's carjacked SUV in the driveway of the Chipman Street house around 12:30 a.m., which is consistent with the state's timeline that this couple went missing from the Washington Ridge apartment complex sometime around 10 o'clock and were being held captive by the time he saw that SUV. He also saw the SUV circle the block around Waste Connections. He has testified that he believes there were 4 men who he believes are black males inside that vehicle. The state has identified 3 black male suspects: LaTops Cobbins, Lamarcus Davidson, Mr. Thomas, and Eric Boyd. Davidson and Cobbins were convicted at trials earlier this year. Eric Boyd has been convicted in federal court as an accessory, is a suspect in the killings but not yet charged. Mr. Jenkins today was used to suggest to this jury that the 4th individual in that vehicle was Thomas. There's nothing, however, to substantiate that, and of course Mr. Jenkins doesn't know any of these suspects from Adam and can't identify anyone in particular. But it was still important to establish a timeline. We also heard from J.D. Ford. He's a Norfolk Southern engineer who was driving a train and actually discovered Mr. Newsom's burned body next to the railroad tracks near the Chipman Street address. He found that body around 12:30 the following afternoon, which would have been a Sunday by then. And that, of course, launched this investigation. We also heard from Robert Watson. He's a state arson investigator who believed that he had found evidence of gasoline that would have been used to burn Chris's body. A TBI agent confirmed that later this afternoon in her testimony, Agent Dana Hodge, who said that she tested the rocks and dirt that Mr. Watson gathered at that scene and found the presence of gasoline. We also heard from Adrienne Nicole Mathis, who is Eric Boyd's cousin. She had loaned him her car that weekend Xavier Jenkins says he saw that car parked behind the SUV at the Chipman Street house. All of that testimony, although it establishes a timeline, does nothing to link Mr. Thomas to these crimes. So the defense did very little cross-examination of any of these witnesses. In fact, Defense Attorney Steve Johnson sort of bolstered the prowess of the TBI in forensic testing to sort of drive home to jurors that, hey, look, these guys didn't miss any forensic evidence, it just isn't there. Tomorrow we expect to hear more crime scene evidence, probably focusing in on items linked to George Thomas that were found inside the Chipman Street house.